You're listening to China Africa Talk.
Jambo, ni Bridget akikuletea kipindi kinachohusiana na China na Afrika.
Vous écoutez le dialogue sino-africain avec Bridget.
Everything China, everything Africa.
Olá, você está ouvindo China Africa Talk com Bridget.
سيداتي وسادتي مرحبا بكم في الحوار الصيني العربي مع بريدجيت.
Now, listeners, have you ever traveled to a place because it was featured in your favorite films? Well, the recent box office success in China is fueling a new wave of movie-inspired travel and culinary exploration, creating new opportunities for cultural tourism. Capitalizing on this momentum, travel agencies in China have offered a variety of themed tours based on popular film locations, scenic spots, and iconic story settings. These offerings have attracted a surge of tourists, with train and air tickets to destinations like western provinces of Sichuan and Shaanxi experiencing a notable increase in demand. China has also launched a global promotion campaign called Travel China with Chinese Films, designed to inspire international travelers to explore the country's breathtaking landscapes and rich cultural heritage. So, what trends are we seeing among African travelers to China? To zoom in on our discussion, I'm joined by Tungamirai Eric Mpona, a PhD student at Zhejiang University and Vice Chairman of the China-Zimbabwe Exchange Center, and Pahia Siririka, a journalist with New Era in Namibia. Guys, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Bridget.
Pahia, you're based in Namibia, and I know you've lived here in China before. Tell us, how did you learn about China? Was it through a movie or a friend or...
Bridget, thank you for having me on the show. It's always good to reflect and talk about China-Africa relations, the valuable stuff that we can learn from our Chinese counterparts and so forth. I have been one of the very lucky Namibians or Africans to travel to China, not only once, but twice on two separate occasions. By virtue of me being a journalist, I have developed quite an immeasurable passion for international relations. So I started talking about China-Namibia relations when I was on radio. And then I transitioned to print. And in print, then I continued the tradition of really highlighting the importance of China-Namibia relations by highlighting and pointing out the projects or the MOUs that exist between China and Namibia. And I think because of this, the embassy here in the capital, Windhoek, noticed the publicity or more of the highlighting of their projects, that I was invited to a 4-month project where we traveled to China left, right, and center. So it is through the embassy of China here in Namibia that I got to learn more about the country. But apart from that, Jackie Chan is the man that we should be thankful to.
Oh, yes, we will.
Introduced China. Jackie Chan introduced China to
the whole of Africa. Yeah.
First person. So, yeah.
Yeah, those movies. I also remember as well, my first experiences with China was...
That was our best friend.
Yeah. That was just everybody. I think even till now, everybody, even adults, they just like, okay. I remember somebody asking me one time, so do you get the chance to see people like Jackie Chan? I'm like, no.
Exactly. And these were great ambassadors of China, the way they carried themselves. And these while, having different episodes of their movies shot in either the US or in China and some parts of China. So I can basically confidently say that I learned about China through Jackie Chan.
Okay. All right. So Eric, you're based in China, but, it'll be nice to know, how did you get to know about China? You've been here for a while as well.
You know why I was laughing? Because I actually share the same experiences.
Yeah.
I think we should thank Jackie Chan for real, because I think that's how I got to know China at a tender age when I was still studying my primary education in Zimbabwe, because at that time, I think the internet was not so developed as it is today.
Yeah.
We used to watch our movies, you
DVD.
buy those CDs and then you go and play. But I mean, when I was very, very, very young in the countryside, we didn't even have the televisions and stuff at that time. So all I remember is that during vacations, right, when you're done with school, I would go to Harare, and then when I go to Harare for the vacation, that's when I had the opportunity to watch television. And then on the television now you see Jackie Chan movies. I used to enjoy them a lot. So I think that's how I got exposed to China and some information about China. And I do believe that that's how I started slowly falling in love with China, like having that kind of motivation to say, if I have an opportunity, I definitely am going to visit this country or something like that. But then I think most importantly, when I was now studying my high school, now at that time, everything was quite developed in terms of the internet. We all could be using the cell phones and stuff, and then you get exposed to a lot of information on the internet, and then you get to know more about this country. And I think that's how I really got to learn more about China initially.
And now you speak very fluent Mandarin. I've seen you on a couple of documentaries, talking about China. And yeah, as you said, you're also a student here where you're watching movies with Jackie Chan or other Chinese superstars. How did this shape your initial perception of China?
I think then I was just thinking this is a very interesting country that has kept its history so well and the culture, because in the Jackie Chan movies you see the kung fu and all those traditional setups and those buildings, the Chinese style buildings and stuff. And of course, there's the modern part of it that you also see. So this kind of modern China and the old China that you would see in those movies actually would provoke in you that sense that yes, this is a country worth exploring. I mean, these kind of stuff that I'm seeing there. So I think it is very appealing. Of course, us as the guys, we usually like those kind of action movies. At that time, these Chinese action movies were a bit different from the ones that we usually watch, like those ones where you have superheroes and stuff. Of course, we enjoy those, but the ones from Jackie Chan, I would say kung fu action movies were actually very appealing from the cultural aspect. I think this is how the Chinese image has been shaped, particularly in Africa. If you ask most of the African students who are currently studying in China, or maybe even those Africans who are still back home, if you ask them about what they know about China, probably they are going to mention Jackie Chan. I think there is a high probability that they will tell you that, we know China through Jackie Chan. But of course, now things have changed. Now they can access more information, and now we even have some more and more Chinese coming into the continent. So maybe perhaps now they will tell you some other different things, including Chinese companies coming there. But if it was before, I do believe they were going to mention Jackie Chan.
But here, just curious there, when you'd watch these movies, what would you think about China? What was your impression there? What impressions did it leave? And how have these scenes shaped your initial perception of China?
What Eric is saying, I was nodding my head in agreement, because that's exactly some of the very interesting perceptions that we had. And the moment you see Kung Fu, for an example, then it was so fun. It was just a beautiful thing to watch. And when I got to China, I was like, okay, that was not just the movies. These are things that are happening in
Yeah,
in in, in real life,
yeah,
and that is, yeah, it's a form of defense mechanism, for an
yeah.
example. It is all about fitness, things that are really manifesting, or things that have replicated into real life from the movies. And my point of departure here is, as a young Namibian boy who never watched television every day, but when I do, watching a Jackie Chan movie and then being in China and seeing these things was really astonishing. One thing that really stands out that we Namibians and that we Africans have, common ground with as far as China is concerned, is the culture of drinking tea.
You're right, right.
That is something that we do every day,
Sun up to
drinking tea
sundown.
with families. Exactly. Drinking tea with family and friends in the morning, around either a table, whether it's in the village, whether it's in the urban areas. There is that culture of togetherness that I was like, okay, this is really nice. Something else that I've also witnessed over the years from, remotely studying the area or virtually studying the country is education and home ecology. These are very important things that I've noticed in the Chinese culture that are present in the African culture. And the fact that they take health so important, like health is a number one priority. And that's why the life expectancy has reached the level it has right now. So it's the way of life, the simplicity, living life in a very simple manner where you are content with what you have. I think for me, that has really overshadowed and perfectly summed up what China is.
Is there any specific places that, if you had the chance to visit again, you'd want to come and visit?
When it comes to Namibia, as old as I am, there is just something about theme parks.
Okay.
And China brims with a lot of theme parks. So if I have the opportunity to go back to China, I would definitely visit a lot of theme parks. I think there's quite a lot of ideas and things that we can learn from the China recreationally to create beautiful environments for our children and for those ones who are bound to take over. I wouldn't mind going back to the Great Wall of China. It was very challenging. My legs were shaking uncontrollably. Imagine, being on that Great Wall, walking. That walking was challenging, and I was like, "Why am I doing this to myself?" So definitely, the Great Wall is one of those things that you haven't been to China if you haven't been to the Great Wall.
Yeah, yeah. It was
So
one
I
place
would.
for me that I was also curious. I think Eric, you can also agree with this. I mean, our history books back in Zimbabwe, we would study. There would just be a little picture in the textbook that has a picture of the Great Wall, and then so you're like, okay, maybe one day I'll visit the Great Wall, and then you're like, whoa, this is endless. I'd like to also know from you, Eric, your travel experiences in China. Where have you been during the whole time that you've lived and studied in China?
I've been in China for 7 years, and this is my eighth year.
Okay.
And so during the process, I've been to, thinking about it, I think nearly 40 cities. By
40.
nearly 40 cities, yeah, somewhere there. But then these cities that I'm talking about prefectural level cities, because cities in China, you would have prefectural level
Yeah,
cities, and then
explain
you
that.
have. So, there are many cities in China, but then the administration levels in China, starting from provincial, you go down to city, you go down to districts, and then besides the cities, by cities, I mean the prefectural level cities. So if you are a foreigner, sometimes it's very confusing that you hear that you are in Hangzhou City and then someone says, okay, Gender City is in Hangzhou City. So it's very confusing. Actually, the difference is that Gender City is a county level city.
Okay.
So there are levels in terms of those cities. So I've been to as far west as Akasu, which is in Xinjiang. I've been to Taiyuan, which is in Shanxi. I've been to Sichuan, Chengdu, and here coastal, because I'm in Zhejiang, which is in the coastal areas of China, the eastern part. And in Zhejiang province, I've been to about 10 of them. There are 11 prefectural levels. I've been to 10 of them, just only one missing.
You've been
And
all
so
over.
it is because I'm someone who loves exploring, and then I have the opportunity to do so. And sometimes I'm just going out there to do my research. And besides Zhejiang here, and I've also been to Fujian, which is also on the coastal areas, Xiamen City. It's a very popular destination there. So all of those experiences that I gathered over the past years, from the coastal regions to the inland to the far west is Xinjiang. I think it's pretty much interesting that you have different experiences
Tell
other
us some of the
nearby cities.
most memorable moments that you had during this escapade of 40 cities.
I think the most fascinating experiences for me are actually in the rural areas, because
Oh,
that's where I
okay.
spend much of my time. Yeah. I'm not so sure if PJ has visited some of the rural areas here in China. But I mean, if you are going to visit those rural areas, they will definitely shape your understanding of how a rural area should be. I mean, back home in Zimbabwe, I think most of our rural areas are still developing, and the infrastructure still developing. A lot of things are yet to be complete, but the Chinese countryside nowadays, I mean, whatever you have in the cities, you almost have it in the rural areas. You have
Yeah.
those malls, you have those skyscrapers, so they're quite very developed. that traveling from one end to the other, it takes just a short period of time. You don't need to spend much of your time on the road. I mean, if I'm going to be traveling from Hangzhou going to Beijing, right? The fastest time that I can get there is about 4.5 hours. We have that fast train. But look, this is like about 1,500 kilometers. If you are in Zimbabwe, that means you are going to South
You're going to
Africa.
South Africa, yes. That's like, so,
Yeah, you're
yeah,
going to South Africa. Yeah, from Zim to South Africa. And how long does it take us from Zim to South Africa by bus?
a
A
whole
whole
day.
day. Yeah,
A
but
whole day.
here, if one of our fellow African brothers or sisters is going to be visiting China, if you are going to be traveling here, instead of taking a plane, you
Yeah.
could take a fast train. You can also take a slow train. The
Oh,
slow train,
yes.
yes. And that way you have that opportunity to see this beautiful countryside.
I know a lot of people who do the train over and over again for here. What was your experience when you were here? Some of the memorable moments that stood out for you during the time that you guys traveled?
I got to see pandas like few meters away from
Oh,
me.
yeah, the
For me, that
panda.
was, it almost like being in a movie,
Mm,
and then all of a sudden you transcend to this other world
yeah.
where all of the things that you have been reading about, that you have
Come
been coloring in
true.
primary school.
Yeah.
That was in, I think it's Sichuan, Chengdu,
Uh-huh.
the land of the pandas. For me, that is still one of the most phenomenal things that I vividly remember. And just for China to take animal diplomacy to that level and to really have a place where visitors can go and see this creature that only exists in that part of the world. For me,
Yeah.
that was amazing. Panda is known to be that symbol of China, such a beautiful, giant yet very soft. And I haven't touched it, but I'm just saying.
Cuddly creature. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
that is a very memorable time that I would forever remember China with. And Eric has mentioned something that has confused me in terms of identifying cities and towns or provinces. So I'm just going to be like, I was in Sichuan, I was in Chengdu, I was in Chaoyang, whether that's a province or I got confused. And
Okay.
Eric pointed it out very well about the confusion. A very good point that Eric also raised was the development of rural areas.
Yeah.
I was actually having hardcore debates with Chinese nationals and telling them, no, we are not in a rural area. This can never be a rural area. What
Yeah.
do you mean rural? There is water, there is electricity, there are
The
activities, there are
Wi-Fi is
hospitals.
on point.
There is Wi-Fi. Like the caretakers or the guides would come to us and ask if we need Wi-Fi, and I'm like, this is a rural area and it has Wi-Fi. What type of rural level is this? So
Oh,
for
yeah.
me, that was amazing. It's really amazing. And I think among my traveling in China, that those are the things that I was overthinking so much about. Because right now, I'm sure between, if you could, Bridget, if you were in Zimbabwe, for an example,
Yeah.
on an occasion, how often do you go back to the village, for an example? If you are working in Harare and you are,
Yeah, it's
I mean,
something that we
Bulawayo is
do
still
maybe
very
on
developed.
Christmas Day or when there's a funeral.
Yes, when you find that window of opportunity that allows you to be away from work is only when you'll go to the village. But if you're working in your own village where you were born and you have
Oh, that would be lovely.
bonus point,
Yeah.
yeah.
Let me just add one more. I think PJ is making a very interesting point here that, here, the rural areas that we are seeing here in China, really, they have a lot of interesting things that really can see. In 2023, right? I brought a couple of scholars from Zimbabwe and then I took them to one rural area
Oh,
here in
yeah.
Zhejiang.
You also been doing some tourism exchange projects there, culture and
Yes,
tourism. Yeah, yeah.
yes, 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 yes.
Amazing.
So the plot was we started in Beijing, and then from Beijing we took them to Hangzhou. It was like from one level to the other, going down until we reached one rural area here in Zhejiang. And they were now asking me, I mean, when are we going to the final destination? I said, which final destination are you asking? We are already at the final destination. So they were shocked and asking, so this is the rural area that you're talking about? I said, yes.
They were like,
You
no,
are
come on,
right now,
Eric.
you are in the rural area.
Imagine.
They probably went home thinking, oh my goodness, Eric didn't take us to the rural area.
Take us to the raw area. I said, now you are in the raw area. And I went back home last year and
Yeah.
we had a forum there.
Mhm.
We took the Chinese to the Zimbabwean raw area. Whilst we were having the forum, I had a presentation of mine. I showed one picture of that very same raw area that I took these guys to
Mhm.
in 2023. And those guys who were seated, started
Like,
laughing. I said,
Eric,
okay, this is a raw area. And then they all started laughing. They thought I was
you made a
making joke.
mistake.
And then I said, oh, I made a mistake. I said, no, this is actually a
This
raw
is
area.
where it
You
is.
can-
It is
you
what
can
it is.
Yes, you can ask these guys who are seated there. They have been to this place and they can tell you that it's a rural area. So, well, yeah, that's the interesting part of it.
Tell me, what about the travel services or apps in China? Have you found them to be very useful? For example, I mean, like when you're making payments, when you brought those groups to China, what did they say? What were you using for payments and stuff like that? It is of concern for any traveler when they go to a foreign land. They want to know, how do I get to pay and stuff like that?
Well, I think the applications here are quite very interesting. The fact is, you might be thinking that, I mean, going to China where they speak Chinese is going to be a very difficult thing for me and to navigate and everything. But I would say that their applications are so user-friendly and a lot of services integrated.
Yeah.
All you need is something like WeChat, something like Alipay. I mean, with those applications, you are already done. Although, let's say WeChat is just for communication, right? But you
Yeah.
would realize that it has a lot of services binded to it. For instance, if you want to buy a train ticket, you can just use your WeChat.
Yeah.
If you want to make a payment, you get into a store, you get into a supermarket, you just use your WeChat. So, and it has English version, so everything will be very convenient for you, even if you don't understand the language. Same applies to the Alipay. I mean, if you're coming here for a short visit, you can just bind your international card to the Alipay, and that means you can do your payments easily.
I think
And,
anybody who's serious about traveling to China must have WeChat. That's where it begins. You have to have WeChat.
You gotta have it. So these
yeah.
are two applications, a must. You need to have them. For me, the most interesting experiences come from the other Chinese version applications. For
Okay.
example, for me, when
Like
I want to
what?
go to Beijing, I use 12306.
Okay.
That's an application for booking trains.
Yeah.
I book a train now, and if I realize that, oh, maybe I can't make it on time, I can change to another time just on the application, just by tapping. I don't
Yeah,
need to go to
yeah.
the train station to do all these. For planes, I use another application. I've used it for the past few months. I started using it last year.
Okay.
That application, you can select your seat. You can do everything that you need to do online. You don't need to go and collect your boarding pass,
your boarding pass.
if you don't have luggage. Very, very convenient. Chinese applications and their services, pretty much unique.
When Eric was highlighting the payment system, I remembered when we were in, I'm not sure if it was Hunan or one of the cities or provinces, where I was having problems in making payments with Alipay and I had cash.
Yeah.
And the person at the counter looked at me in a funny way where I noticed that they were annoyed that I'm having cash.
Yeah.
Because the payment system there is very...
We like bags of cash.
We like to feel...
We are cashless.
We Africans like to feel the money in our hands.
Yes. We want to count it and smell it.
So, and I think for me, Eric clearly pointed out very crucial things, especially when it comes to the apps that makes it very convenient. And so to anyone who's traveling to China, the Alipay, the WeChat, and I think to some extent, offline maps also might count in your favor. I think these things have made it very easy for people to travel. What I love about China is the ability for you to easily travel by air. And once you have landed, for you to easily travel by the bullet trains or the fast trains. And once you are done with the train, it's either by taxi or by bike. All of those things just in the palm of your hands. And I think that's where we're moving. I got used to this easy lifestyle in China. Then when I came home, when I'm saying, can we please adopt the cashless system because we are tired of carrying money
Oh,
around.
so now you were
The
telling people about the cashless
Yes.
system.
I'm telling them, I'm like, can you guys create apps where you just tap my phone and then, automatic transactions are made? We got used to all of those apps and it made things very easy. Just the transportation system already, the efficiency of the app, the networks. I mean, there's no way that you would be suffering. Even if you are deep down underground in the railway stations, the network is still catching properly.
I just want to ask you guys both relating to film. We have several Chinese films, including Nerja 2, which garnered international attention, and an initiative called China Travel with Chinese films has been launched recently. If you were invited to join this program, which film locations would you prioritize visiting and why?
Yeah, I've been to Hengdian, which is the Hengdian World Studios. It's here in Zhejiang. It's in Jinhua. And in Jinhua, you guys might know that there is Yiwu there.
Yeah.
So Yiwu is very, very popular, even more popular than Zhejiang itself if you're in Africa. I'm sure PJ would agree with me. If you're going to do a random check there and just ask, do you know Zhejiang? Maybe some may not answer. If you say Yiwu, they will
You,
answer. So,
yeah.
well,
Yeah.
Hengdian is very close to Yiwu because they are in the same city. And so I went there and I even tried, we had an experience of you being an actor of a particular film, just an experience. It's very interesting because the whole park, it's a very big park, which is, you will feel like you are in a city or something, you are in a tourist attraction place or
But it's just a movie
somewhere.
set.
It's a movie set. It's a movie set. So that's
Yeah.
that's actually what makes it the world's largest outdoor
Yeah.
movie studio. The whole place, it's a movie studio. For me, I've been to Hengdian like 2 times. The first time I went there through an activity. The activity was designed to make us have that experience, right? As foreigners looking at Chinese films and these kind of world studios. After that, I said, well, I have to go there myself. And I spent the whole day there, and it was a unique experience. Well, now you're talking about nature. I watched the movie.
Okay.
After a couple of days, it came out, and then I went to the cinema and watched it. Well, it was very, very, very interesting. I must say that
Very
the
full of Chinese cultural elements as well. Eh?
yeah, the Chinese movies have done it. They know how to really get their niche market in this international film market.
Yeah.
I think where the movie Avatar was shot, I think that was in the Hunan province. That's a must-go area. I think when it comes to visiting, it's just one of those places that really says a lot about, what China stands for. The Terracotta Warriors as well.
Okay.
Terracotta Warriors are very important spots that must be visited. It really says a lot about the importance of film, especially in that part of the world. I think Mount Everest as well. It's the Farewell Atlantis. That movie was shot in 2012, and it's an area that says a lot about China, and that whenever film enthusiasts are going to visit the place, then it's just a beautiful place. I think lastly, I'm not sure of the province, but the movie Hidden Dragon and Coaching Tiger, it's a very beautiful setting. It's almost like a whole other world picked up and put in there. And I think these are really beautiful places where people should visit when it comes to film locations. It's almost the same as here in Namibia, where you have the Namib Desert,
Yeah.
where the Mummy was filmed. It's just beautiful places that you should never ever go to a place without visiting. That for me is, if I'm to go big, I'll try and push to go into the sites.
I think we should all visit the Hengdian World Studio that Eric was also
Yeah,
talking about.
you have to be there.
We are ready for that.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for your time. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have on this program of China Africa Talk. And yeah, we'll see you on your next travel escapades in China.
Thank you very much for having us, Bridget. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much,
Thank
guys.
you.
Listeners, for your news update on what's happening with China and Africa, from a Chinese and African perspective. Subscribe to our newsletter on CGTN website and Substack. Search China Africa Talk. Until next time, it's goodbye for now.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others. Post it on social media or leave a rating and review. Thanks again. See you next time.